and welcome to Listen Up Homebuyers. On this episode of the podcast, we are so lucky to have Gea Elika. Gea is a longtime friend. He is the owner and broker of Elika Real Estate in New York City. Gea is a former director of the National Association of Exclusive Buyer Agents and a longtime advocate for home buyers in New York City. Okay, I've talked enough. All right, Gea, hi, how are you?
Hi, Victoria. It's great to be back with you.
It's so good to see you again. You know, so much has been changing and happening since we last spoke. Tell me about what's going on in New York City as it relates to home buyers.
It's an interesting market. There's a lot of cross signals going on, whether it's foreign investors, local end users. A lot of it is headline driven or needs based driven. So at the moment, what we're seeing mostly is people upgrading at the top end of the market. So if you're a luxury buyer, 5 million and above, you're taking advantage of the current marketplace because there is stock. At the primary end user home buyer market, the inventory is limited and so are the discounts. And affordability is kind of shot at the primary because of the interest rates and because of the overall economy and the tariff news and everything that's going on around us. So if one is slightly stretched, they're feeling it harder and they're less involved in the market at the current time because they're more sensitive to the dialogue on a broader scale.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You know, it's different there, but it's like a song that is very similar to where I am. It's very difficult for first-time home buyers to buy anything here in the Washington, D.C. area. Very challenging. Where do you see any changes coming in the near future?
We try to service the entire home buyer market,
Sure.
but we also have to position to where the activity is.
Hmm.
And with elevated interest rates and volatile interest rates, it's a harder discussion with a first-time home buyer because they're seeing volatility week to week in their affordability, and then they're not seeing prices particularly come off. And then when they enter in an open house in Brooklyn, let's say, they'll encounter 6 or 7 other buyers, and they're swimming against the tide.
Yeah.
Let's say that the home buyers right now are sensitive
Yeah.
and they're being patient because they also don't know the future of the economy, given the dialogue that's out there as far as the tariffs and everything else that's happening with the economy and whether their jobs are safe, whether we're heading into recession or not,
I know.
stagflation. There's a lot on the table for a home buyer to digest. So we position for all ends of the market. The real opportunity right now that I'm seeing and where a lot of deals are kind of happening is 5 million and above.
Yeah.
And that's needs based
Hmm.
and they're less sensitive to affordability and they're able to pay a premium for a premium home in a building that stands out.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing is particularly with tariffs, like renovations are not exactly ideal when you're potentially looking at a 20 or 30% increase in the cost of
Right.
wood or steel or hardware, whatever it may be. But when you have the luxury of money, you're able to pay for what you want. And even if it's not on market, a lot of deals at the moment are being done off market.
Hmm.
So a lot
Tell
of
me.
buyers want to live in a particular building, a particular type of apartment, and then we have to go and headhunt for it.
Yeah. So tell me about that process. When you say that they're off market.
Most of it happens really broker to broker.
Got
So,
it.
for example, we can definitely find ownership on a property very easily, but we prefer to contact the broker that transacted, represented perhaps the buyer of that property, 3 or 5, whatever years ago, and we would reach out to the broker first
I see.
and
Right.
ask them if the owner would be interested in selling. Lister, so whoever was the representative for the seller, because
Right.
the records indicate that because the seller's agent's no longer there, it's the
Right.
buyer's agent that represented the
Right.
current owner.
And what is that process like for people? Are you finding success with that sort of interaction?
When it comes from the buyer's perspective, it's really about compromise, and the compromise is paying up.
Hmm.
One can't go into that process expecting a discount of any kind.
Right.
And often you'll pay a premium to get a product that's not on market. So off market is not ideal for somebody that wants a deal. It's not a
Right.
deal driven market.
Right.
It's a purely needs based market that one pays a premium for. It's like a luxury handbag or a luxury car that's
Right.
finite.
Right.
And you don't want it to go to market. You want to buy it before it even reaches the market.
Yeah. What kind of tips are you offering your buyers as you're going into this? What sort of strategy do you have?
I have to disappoint a lot of people.
Hmm.
With money and without money, it's really managing disappointment. Um, and often I need a psychiatrist, but often I'm acting as a psychiatrist for others.
Yeah.
And when it comes to money in a home, it's stressful because it's limited.
Yeah.
It's our inventory is very tight, and in New York City, I can't speak for the rest of the country, but in New York City, we don't have a lot of land. Manhattan's
Right.
an island. Buildings have to be torn down before new product can come to market, or you're dealing with old bones and old detail that may not be particularly divine or pre-war and wanted. So the hard part is finding something that's good.
Tell me a little bit about ownership there, because I know that there are so many co ops. Can you give a little explanation about what exactly is a cooperative? Just give some background on that.
Co-op is a club. It's a community,
Hmm.
and in order to join it, you have to be financially and verbally and physically presentable. And so it's definitely not an investor unless you're buying a co-op that's liberal and loose, and which you don't want to buy because that means that it can fall under stress quicker than another co-op.
Yeah.
Co-ops are very interesting because they account for. It used to be as high as 85% of our market. But with the rate of development over the last 20 years, that percentage has fallen probably to around 70 or so percent.
Okay.
I mean, it's not an exact, but it's an approximate. And that there are more of them. And then there's certain things like if you want, if you're at the top end of the market and you want to live on Park Avenue, well, there's not a lot of condos on Park Avenue, so you have to go co-op.
Hmm.
If you want to live on the Upper West Side by the park, you may have more options with a co-op than you would a condo. If you want a fireplace, well, good luck getting it in a new development. Very rarely do they build fireplaces these days. So pre-war co-op is probably what you're going to go after.
Right.
But be ready. It's worse than joining a golf club or any kind of social club. It's a microscopic
Ugh.
operation into your financials, and we have to present one basically selling them to the co-op board. So once they reach the state, first of all, they have to be accepted to be interviewed. That's the first step.
Tell me about that first step. How do you get accepted in a co op?
Well, first of all, you've got to be accepted by us being your broker because we want to make sure that you're not wasting your time.
Right.
I find that time is the most valuable thing in our lives.
Yeah.
And the clock's ticking and no one has the time to waste. So we like to prepare our buyers ahead of time. And we do so by what's called the revenue financial statement. And we brought the first to market revenue financial statement calculator, which just makes it easier to complete.
Right.
And it punches out a PDF and edits can be made along the way. But the first step of once you've secured your broker, hopefully it's us, and if you're not, you're working with somebody else, but you want to have a revenue financial statement done ahead of time. What that is that's assets and liabilities,
Got it.
dollar for dollar, cent for cent, backed up with statements for all. With totals, has to be updated. So if you're shopping for a co-op and you're two years down the pike, then you've got to make sure that your statements are no further out than 6 months back, ideally the last month's statement. We start off with doing the revenue financial statement, asking about the qualifications of the person. You have to be transparent. There's no smoking mirrors with a co-op transaction.
Yeah.
So if you don't I have a lot, for example, I just did a condo deal where the buyer didn't want to disclose anything. It's like, I'm so-and-so and so-and-so. I don't want anybody to know anything.
Yep.
And in that case of scenario, you have no option. There's no way your co-op's a good fit for you.
Right. Right.
So one has to be open to scrutiny and presenting as much information as possible. So profile matters. You have to have reference letters. You can have all the money in the world, but you don't have a reference letter. No. I mean, there's people like, Roman Abramovich, the Russian oligarch that got denied by Fifth Avenue Co-op from the board, and they turned him down, and they don't have to give you an excuse why. Yeah, and
This is what I've
you're
heard.
turning down an oligarch that's worth a ridiculous amount of money, and he has no control. And so the people that are on the board have all the control, and you have to be a good citizen that wants to be part of the community.
Got it. Okay.
There's a silver lining there. And if we just backtrack for a second, so once
Yeah.
they do the financial statement, you don't want to submit an offer without a financial statement. So when you submit an offer, you submit an offer with a profile, whether it's your employment, any clubs or good deeds that you've done, your financial statement, and sometimes a submit offer form, which is the same thing as a revenue financial statement. So it's all inclusive, and it's really about the buyer's agent representing you in the best light possible.
Yeah.
And you could be side by side, dollar for dollar with another offer, but your profile's better,
Yeah.
you get the deal.
Wow. So in these scenarios, what happens with fair housing?
That's a great question. Very little. Very little. I
Yeah.
mean, we have to practice fair housing, right? But
Right.
co-ops don't.
Right.
'Cause there's not there. I've read that there's some sort of bill that may come through that co-ops will have to account for why they did not approve you.
Yeah.
But who knows when that happens? And until then, they don't have to give you a reason.
Once heard that there was a major big time celebrity that was turned down and it caught my attention. I thought, what?
Yeah, Madonna's been turned
That's
down.
what I
I
was
mean,
thining of.
plenty of people being turned down. It doesn't matter who you are. Well,
Right.
it does actually. I
Right.
mean, I've represented government officials that were turned down. I can't mention names or what have you, but very
Right.
high level government figure, and we couldn't get him into 740 Park Avenue, which is the premier co-op in the city. It's really is a special building, but yeah, there's no guarantee. So
Wow.
if you need a home by a certain date, not a good idea.
Okay. It sounds like
If you're willing to wait, be patient, and go through the process, great idea, because you will get something that maybe has a lot of historical value.
yeah.
You can get a Rosario Candela building, like a pre-war spectacular detail.
Yeah.
That's you're buying history. You're buying something that will never be replicated. That they can't even afford to build it these days. So you get to buy a special product at a reasonable price, mind you, compared to a condo.
Mhm.
In a financially usually healthy and stable building. And the silver lining with co-ops is that during the global financial crisis, when, for example, the mortgage notes that were being sold and the banks weren't doing proper screening, and
Right.
fishermen with no income were getting mortgages for $2 million, all of that, but because co-ops were the saving grace of
Yeah.
Manhattan.
Yeah.
And that's why you didn't see Manhattan drop 30-40% like some speculative neighborhoods that did, because you had buyers that didn't have the money, that were over leveraged, and then they got called on, and their notes got called on, and then that was it. Where co-ops actually did their homework
Yeah. Yeah.
versus a bank that never did their homework. They should have done their homework, because then we wouldn't have been in that place to begin with. I think what's important is the market's moving so fast, and the digital age is upon us, and AI appears to be the bee's knees of everyone's conversation. But I think what's really important is AI hasn't opened doors and walked through doors and seen the sunlight as yet, until a robot replaces us, and 20 years of walking through doors and understanding detail and feeling the
Mhm.
solidity of a structure or the quality of the detail
Right.
of the renovation, or understand the desirability of a particular neighborhood versus another, or a particular product type, and so forth. I think buyers should be careful with what they learn and what they decipher and use from AI. We know that Zillow's home buying program was stopped because of its estimate not doing the correct
Algorithm.
calculations, and they were losing money, so they had to cancel that. So AI is incredibly useful and a great assistant,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that it replaces a professional.
Yeah. I agree. I agree.
But for example, doing comps can be a very intricate and difficult process, and
Yes.
especially for co-ops, because that data is not processed like condo data. So
Yeah.
deeds, they're not deeds. In a co-op, you're a shareholder, so
Right.
you don't get a deed, you don't get a title. You're a shareholder, and those shares are not registered with public record. It's not like buying a share in the stock market.
Right.
And even then, it's hard, unless you buy a certain percentage of a company, nobody knows you own it, right? Only you. Same with a co-op, unless the media gets a hold, high profile, and they get a hold of it and they write an article about what you bought it for. But so AI doesn't have privy to that information.
Yeah. Yeah.
So AI can't help you with a co-op, that's for certain.
Yeah.
can maybe help you with a couple of things. And yes, it does pull AI pulls data ultimately from yours or mine or other people's websites,
Hmm.
and then that's how it learns.
Yeah.
So we're educating the AI,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
but what I've found a process where I love it. It doesn't replace anything. It just helps me speed things up sometimes.
Yeah.
And if I need to decipher or maybe my question my own opinion, um, I will use ChatGPT, then I will use Gemini, and then I'll use Grok, and then I'll ask them which one do you think is the better, and so forth. And I have one screen the other.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, I have them all three in my browser as
Okay.
bookmarks, and I'm like, Gemini, did ChatGPT, does it have the right perspective on this, or
That's
stuff like that.
funny. Oh, that's funny. Well, Gea Elika is the owner and broker of Elika Real Estate in New York City. And Gea, I know you're busy, so I really appreciate you taking time to sit with me and just kind of give us an overview of what's happening in New York City. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Victoria. It's been a pleasure.